We land at Arul Velika Airport, Bucharest's business airport. Driving into the city, we're struck by the residential architecture. From Second Empire to Gothic Revival, and the unique Neo-Romanian with some Art Nouveau. The other thing that gets our attention is the wide tree-lined streets and the cafe scene. No wonder they called Bucharest Little Paris in the 1930s. We check into our hotel, the Hilton Athene Palace. This place opened in 1914 and was a notorious den of spies in the years leading up to World War II. This will be a play in 3 acts. First is about Bucharest, from its charter to today, but mostly about the post-Ottoman period. Act 2 is Peleș Castle and the most recent golden age of Romania. For the final act, we go back to the first golden age in the time of Stephen the Great and the painted churches. Bucharest received its town charter in 1459 from none other than Vlad the Impaler of Dracula fame. The Romanian principalities of Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia became vassal states of the Ottoman Empire in 1541. They became buffers between the Ottomans and their European rivals, the Habsburgs, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and later Russia. Throughout the period of Ottoman domination, there were rebellions. In 1821 and 1848, the rebellion set in place the national will to be free. Karl I became the Prince of Wallachia and Moldavia in 1866, but was still a vassal of the Ottomans. In the Russo-Turkish War of 1877-78, Russia defeated the Ottomans with the help of the Romanians. As a result, Romania became an independent kingdom in 1877. In 1881, a constitutional monarchy was established, and Prince Karl I was proclaimed King of Romania. The period between 1881 and the start of World War I saw unprecedented commercial and industrial growth in Bucharest. The Romanian Athenaeum Concert Hall opened in 1888 and became the symbol of Romanian culture. And King Carol I's stern visage is watching everything. That's the king outside the library he founded in 1895. It's now the central library of the university. By the turn of the century, Bucharest had gas lighting, a telephone system, a horse-car tram, and a limited use of electricity. The Academy of Commercial and Industrial Studies was founded in 1913. It's now part of the University of Bucharest. This building was the first astronomical observatory in Romania, founded in 1910. To recover from the Great Depression, many public works projects were undertaken in the 1930s. The Royal Palace was erected from 1936 to 37. Victoria Palace currently houses the Prime Minister and his cabinet. It was designed in 1937 to house the Foreign Minister. It was nearly complete in 1944 when it was heavily damaged by the bombing of Bucharest. It was also a time for monuments. A triumphal arch was inaugurated in 1936. This monument to early aviators was built between 1930 and 35. Under communist rule, it was the practice to demolish sections of the historic Old Town and build new standardized apartment blocks and office buildings. Nicolae Ceausescu was the General Secretary of the Romanian Communist Party from 1965 to 89 and the President of the Republic from 74 to 89. His government was severely totalitarian and repressive. On December 21, 1989, 100,000 people gathered here in Revolution Square to hear a speech by Ceausescu. He blamed the current unrest on fascist agitators. He misread the crowd and they began to jeer and yell insults. The entire speech was broadcast live nationwide. The revolution had begun. Soon protesters were confronted by soldiers, tanks, and special security squads. There were many casualties, and bullet holes are still visible in the buildings around the square. The next morning, Ceausescu tried to speak to the protesters from this balcony. Protesters were forcing themselves into the building. Ceausescu and his wife panicked. They were hustled to the roof, where they were extracted by helicopter. They were arrested the next day. They were tried for genocide and other crimes. The trial lasted about an hour. They were found guilty and immediately executed. Today there are several monuments around the square to people who died in the revolution or at the hands of the Ceausescu regime. 30 years have passed. The population of metropolitan Bucharest is over 2.4 million. It's one of the main industrial centers and transport hubs of Eastern Europe. Bucharest is home to several software companies operating offshore delivery centers. For Act 2, we're going back to 1883 to the town of Sinaia, nestled in the Carpathian Mountains. King Carl I was homesick for his native Bavaria and found a substitute here. So he built a grand alpine castle with Italian elegance, German aesthetics, following Renaissance lines. The cost of the castle in 1880 was 120 million in today's dollars. After King Michael's forced abdication in 1947, the communists seized all royal property, including the Peleș estate. But Ceausescu didn't like the castle very much, and he closed it in 1975. After the revolution, the castle was re-established as a heritage site, and today is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Romania. I wonder what King Carl I would think about that. The castle has over 170 lavishly furnished rooms. Many rooms have a dedicated theme from world cultures. This is the Turkish parlor. Some are dedicated to a specific function, like the music room. The castle has over 2,000 paintings in its collection. Perhaps the most exceptional items are the hand-painted stained glass. You enter the castle through an anteroom and then up a flight of stairs to the Hall of Honor, a relatively small room, but it extends up 3 floors to a stained glass ceiling that can be retracted. The armory contains a collection of over 4,000 pieces of weaponry and armor. Even the halls are lavishly decorated. The king's study. The Moorish salon. The state dining room. The concert room. The Oriental room. King's bedroom. There are 30 bathrooms in the castle. This one is the king's. The breakfast room. The guest library. Each of the bedroom suites is uniquely decorated. And then there are the Italian gardens outside. It truly is a castle fit for a king. We have one more castle to visit, Conte Cozina Castle, for lunch. It's a beautiful day. And the view of the Carpathian Mountains is picture perfect. There's time for a nap on the long drive back to Bucharest. We're having dinner at the Royal Palace, which is now the National Art Museum. The ladies are all dressed up. We're dining in the Royal State Dining Room. A flower for all the ladies. A very nice dinner with a ravioli starter and steak for the main course. And then the party starts. Back to our hotel. It's been a long day today, and it promises to be a busy one tomorrow. For Act 3, we fly to Suceava. The Humor Monastery was built in 1530 over the foundation of a previous monastery dating to about 1415. The north and west sides of the church have taken the most weather over the centuries. The frescoes under the eaves are still brilliant. The tower was for protection. In the 16th century, there was always a war going on, somewhere nearby. Each monastery has a distinct base color. Here it's reddish-brown. The purpose of the frescoes was to make the biblical stories and the lives of the saints known to villagers who couldn't read. Angels are depicted with 4 wings and a face. Every inch is covered. Very little space is wasted in decoration. The frescoes are amazingly detailed. Headed to Voronet, we get a look at traditional farmhouses. Carved into the gate of the Voronet Monastery is the coat of arms of Moldavia. Voronet has a steeple, unlike Humor. The steeple indicates that this church was built by a prince. In this case, Stephen the Great, in 1488, to commemorate the victory of the Battle of Vasilou. The dominant base color here is a intense blue. Just like the Humor, the pictures are meant to educate the villagers on the Bible and the lives of the saints. But there's a subtlety here. The antagonists in the stories are dressed as Ottomans. 16th century propaganda. But the piece de resistance is the entire end of the church dedicated to the apocalypse. There is so much here, but the best part is the top panel where the angels are rolling up time, represented by the signs of the zodiac. All this is a lot to digest on a single morning, so it must be time for lunch. We're at Acasă, which means at home, for some home cooking Romanian style, like grilled potatoes and plates of cheese, sausage, garlic, and onions. Polenta that smiles back at you. Stuffed cabbage. And for dessert, papanasi, a sweet cheese pastry with cream, blueberries, and cherry jam. Then it's back to the plane. We have places to go. Our next stop is Basque country, San Sebastian via Bilbao.